You stepped into her life and did what you thought every woman wanted. You showed up on time. You answered messages instead of disappearing. You listened instead of brushing her off. You didn't disappear for days or make her wonder what she meant to you. You were attentive, consistent, and honest. For a while, everything seemed to click. Her eyes lit up when she saw you. Her touch lingered. Her replies came quickly. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, something changed. Her texts got shorter. Her enthusiasm softened. Her presence felt lighter, like she was there but not fully with you. And what makes it so confusing is that you didn't suddenly become unreliable. You didn't insult her, cheat, or turn cold. You didn't mess up in any obvious way. What actually slipped wasn't your worth as a man. It was your emotional position in the dynamic. You gave her what most advice tells you to give: safety, consistency, attentiveness. But you crossed a line you were never warned about. You made her feel emotionally comfortable in a way that erased any sense of upward movement toward you. Not protected, not respected, but emotionally padded. And that distinction is harsh to hear because it cuts through everything you were told about how love should work. You were conditioned to believe that if you just treated her well enough, love would last. You were never told that attraction plays by a different set of rules. Women rarely explain this clearly, not because they're hiding something malicious, but because most of it runs beneath conscious awareness. They feel it long before they can describe it. I'm not here to attack women or to hand you tricks for manipulating them. The point is to decode what's actually happening emotionally when you think you're doing everything right, and it still slips away. If you've ever been replaced by someone you consider less kind, less stable, or less loyal, this is the pattern you've lived. From a young age, you absorbed a romantic script. Be good, be gentle, be consistently available, and she'll stay. That narrative sounds noble, so people repeat it. But that script confuses what is morally right with what actually drives attraction. Being kind, ethical, and caring is non-negotiable as a human being. But those qualities alone do not create romantic pull. What magnetizes a woman is not niceness. It's your emotional solidity. Not just being calm, but holding your own center. Most men don't lose women because they're jerks. They lose them because, step by small step, they hand over their emotional steering wheel. There's a world of difference between expressing care from a place of strength and expressing care from a place of fear. When kindness rises from inner stability, it feels reassuring and secure. When kindness is fueled by anxiety about losing her, it stops feeling like generosity and starts feeling like obligation. You might be thinking, I'm just telling her I care. What she quietly feels is, he needs me to reassure him that he matters. You don't say that, but your timing, tone, and constant checking in communicate it. True emotional leadership means you can love her without collapsing into her. You can offer attention without handing over your self-respect. You stay rooted in your own life, purpose, and values regardless of how she feels on a given day. Most men don't notice the exact moment they step out of that position. They only feel the aftershock. She becomes polite instead of eager, warm instead of drawn, present but not leaning in. The edge vanishes. The curiosity disappears. She didn't leave because you were too kind. She pulled away because you stopped being a center she rose toward and became a satellite quietly orbiting her. Attraction doesn't usually implode in conflict. It drains away when a man emotionally bows out of his own role. Once you recognize that shift, it's impossible to unsee it. You've probably heard men talk about women trading up and immediately thought of money, looks, or social status. They imagine hypergamy as purely material. The richer guy, the taller guy, the more famous guy. That misunderstanding traps them. The deeper truth is that this instinct isn't primarily about resources, it's about emotional hierarchy. It's about who feels like the gravitational center and who feels like they're revolving around that center. Attraction isn't measured only in what you own, but in where you stand emotionally in relation to her. Ask yourself, in the dynamic between you and her, who seems to be leaning up and who seems to be leaning down? When a woman senses that she is more emotionally invested than you are, that she is working to earn your continued interest, desire surges. Not because she likes suffering, but because she feels herself moving toward something. When she senses that you are more attached, more anxious, and more afraid to lose her than she is to lose you, something inside quietly powers down. It's not always a thought, it's often just a bodily reaction. Attraction doesn't climb upward toward what feels emotionally beneath you. It wants to move toward what feels just beyond complete possession. This is why two men with nearly identical lives can provoke opposite reactions. One walks into a room and women lean in. The other is overlooked, even if he's nicer or more attentive. The difference isn't always looks or income. It's the emotional stance each man holds. One man radiates, I have my own direction and you're welcome to walk beside me. The other radiates, choose me and I'll reorganize my life around you. Women feel that distinction faster than they can explain it. A woman does not need to feel small or inferior to desire you. That's not what this is about. But she does need to feel there is something about you that she can't simply assume will always be there no matter what. She needs the subtle, honest awareness that losing you is possible if she drifts too far away from the connection. That quiet sensation, I can't take him for granted, keeps her emotionally awake in the relationship. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be real. This is where men confuse stability with attraction. Stability is essential, but emotional predictability in the sense of he will always bend, always stay, always adjust to me, erases polarity. When your presence becomes guaranteed regardless of how she treats the bond, the story stops moving. Total certainty is soothing, but it can also feel like a closed book. Desire rarely thrives where nothing is at stake. You believe your unwavering consistency should secure loyalty. From her side, if that consistency comes packaged with self-abandonment, no boundaries, no standards, no line you won't cross to keep her comfortable, it no longer feels like strength. It feels like over-availability. Hypergamy responds to perceived direction, not your intentions. She's not calculating consciously, but her system is tracking. Who is leading, who is adjusting, who is subtly waiting to be selected. A man can be incredibly devoted and still feel to her like he's waiting on the bench, hoping to be sent into the game. That loss of emotional leverage, not a loss of objective value, is why so many men watch a woman cool off despite their best behavior. She doesn't walk away because you're kind. She drifts because she no longer feels any upward pull. A lot of men hear about tests and immediately get defensive, like they're being secretly graded. They imagine trick questions, mind games, and hidden rules. In reality, what you experience as testing is often just her nervous system checking where you stand over and over without her even trying. She isn't testing your IQ or your ability to recite confident lines. She's sensing one simple thing. How anchored are you compared to how anchored she feels? Every small moment tells her something. Who reaches first when there's been silence? Who panics when there's tension? Who needs to clarify where we stand more often? Who gets thrown off center by a delayed reply or a change in tone? These micro interactions aren't dramatic, but together they sketch a picture of who's leading emotionally and who's following. When you initiate every conversation with a hint of urgency, she doesn't only hear interest. She feels you have little else going on emotionally. When you instantly move to soothe every shift in her mood, she doesn't experience you as simply supportive. On a gut level, she starts to feel you're revolving around her. When you're always the one driving physical closeness, planning the next hangout, seeking reassurance, asking, "Are we okay?" Or, "Did I do something wrong?" You think you're giving transparency and effort. What often lands on her side is something closer to pressure. She feels pursued, and pursuit can be flattering in the early stages. But when pursuit doesn't come with grounded self-possession, it gradually strips away tension. Once there's no emotional distance left to close, desire has nothing to push against. Here's the piece most men miss. You don't fail these moments because you initiated, checked in, or cared. Two men can perform the exact same gesture and get opposite outcomes. The difference is the emotional direction behind the action. One man sends a message from a place of, "My life is full and I'm offering this connection because I want to." Another sends it from, "If she doesn't respond the way I hope, I'll spiral." The words might be identical, but the energetic weight is not. She feels that in an instant. That's why trying to memorize clever responses or follow rigid dating rules won't solve the problem. You can't mimic inner balance. No, you either have it or you start building it. These tests are not elaborate traps. They're more like reflections. They show her who remains solid when there's uncertainty and who rushes to erase all discomfort so they can feel secure again. When she senses that your emotional climate is completely dependent on her reactions, her attraction flickers, not because she wants to dominate you, but because polarity requires two distinct poles. She needs to feel that you have your own stable center that exists whether she leans in, pulls back, or pauses. When you stop rushing to plug every silence, explain every feeling, or smooth out every bump, you're not being cruel. You're simply refusing to abandon your position. That's what creates the pull she can feel but can't always name. Most men think the answer is to do more, text more, reassure more, confess more. In truth, the shift happens when you collapse less, when you remain intact. The moment she feels she can tilt your emotional world with a single mood, she stops feeling drawn toward you and starts feeling responsible for you. And responsibility isn't sexy. That's what she's quietly measuring every time, even if neither of you realizes it. This is why so many caring men feel blindsided. From your side, you did what you were taught, you leaned into the relationship, you checked in, you made sure she felt seen, you offered more reassurance when you sensed distance. None of that was malicious. It came from a genuine place. Yet that's exactly the time you noticed her interest starting to fade. The paradox is painful. The same gestures that feel loving to you can register as neediness to her when your emotional footing has slipped. Think of it this way. Your behavior is like a magnifying glass. It amplifies whatever emotional foundation it sits on. When you come from surplus, when your life, self-respect, and purpose feel intact, you give because you want to share, not because you're terrified of losing. In that case, your care feels light, generous, and optional. She can receive it without feeling trapped. When you operate from emotional scarcity, the exact same actions feel like an attempt to manage her, to keep her from drifting, to tighten your grip. She may not label it consciously, but her body feels a weight that shouldn't be there. Picture two scenarios. In the first, you hold her hand on the couch because you're enjoying the moment. If she pulled away, you'd still be okay. You'd notice, maybe be curious, but your sense of self wouldn't crack. In the second you reach for her hand because you need that touch to reassure yourself she's still yours. If she shifts away, your chest tightens and you immediately wonder what's wrong. From the outside, both men are doing the same thing, holding hands. On the inside, the emotional charge is completely different, and her nervous system responds to that difference. This is why you hear lines like, "You're great, I just don't feel that pull anymore." It sounds absurd. You think, if I care more, shouldn't that help? But to a woman, care delivered from a place of fear feels like obligation. She doesn't feel swept up in something bigger than herself. She feels like she is the anchor holding you together. That is draining. Desire needs room to move. Need tries to freeze everything in place. So men respond by increasing effort. More compliments, more favors, more check-ins, more declarations of love. They assume the relationship is starving for attention, when in reality, it's overloaded with ungrounded emotional weight. The truth most men resist is that care doesn't automatically create attraction. It intensifies whatever emotional dynamic already exists. When you're in a strong position, your care deepens the bond. When you're in a collapsed position, your care accelerates the unraveling. Until you reclaim your own center, no amount of sweetness will fix what feels off. The issue is not that you're too kind, it's that your kindness has become a substitute for inner solidity. And she can feel that long before she can explain it. When physical intimacy starts to slow down or disappear, most men treat it as a moral issue or a negotiation problem. They think she's withholding affection to punish them or control them. That mindset leads them into arguments, ultimatums, and endless conversations about how often we should be having sex. What they rarely recognize is that for most women, the body often reacts before the mind catches up. When attraction weakens, her system doesn't say, "Let me teach him a lesson." It simply shuts doors that used to open easily. Nothing dramatic has to happen. She may still say she cares about you. She might still enjoy your company and appreciate what you do. But the spontaneous desire to let you in physically starts to dim. Her body no longer leans forward in the same way. She might not fully understand it herself, so when you ask, she reaches for vague phrases. "I'm just not in the mood." "Something feels off," or "I don't know why, I just don't feel like it." What actually shifted is the emotional polarity that once made intimacy feel exciting, alive, and natural. This is where men fall into a trap. They believe they can talk their way back into attraction. They try explaining how neglected they feel, how much they care, how much they miss the closeness. They think if they convince her of their good intentions, desire will return. But each attempt to argue, plead, or reason through the lack of intimacy often confirms the very imbalance that killed it. Her body reads, "He needs sex or closeness to feel secure about himself," and that misalignment makes her retreat further. The more you chase physical connection as a cure for emotional discomfort, the less appealing that connection becomes to her. It starts to feel like an obligation instead of a natural expression of shared energy. She's not closing off because she's cruel or manipulative. She's responding instinctively to a gap between your words and your emotional stance. Attraction cannot easily coexist with the sense that one person is clinging to the other to feel okay. When your sense of worth hinges on how much she wants you, her desire collapses under the weight of that responsibility. So you double down. You buy gifts, plan romantic nights, shower her with compliments, and ask even more often for reassurance or sex, hoping to respark what's fading. From her perspective, nothing essential has been fixed. You're still leaning on her to balance you. The pressure grows. The harder you push, the more her body associates closeness with heaviness rather than excitement. Sex becomes something she has to gear herself up for, not something she's pulled toward. You don't repair this by demanding more intimacy or by shutting down and giving her the silent treatment. You repair it by reestablishing your own emotional footing. That means returning to your own direction, deepening your life outside the relationship, and letting your sense of self expand beyond her reactions. Not to punish her, not to play cool, but to stop smothering the connection with need. When you stand firmly in yourself again without resentment, her nervous system can relax. Attraction doesn't come back because you begged for it. It comes back when the dynamic feels balanced enough for desire to move freely instead of carrying your unspoken fears. The men who struggle most with all of this are rarely selfish or indifferent. They're often the ones who tried the hardest to do things right. They show up, listen to her stories, respond thoughtfully, and try to be emotionally open. Over time, though, they shift from being men with rich inner lives to men whose internal world orbits one person. The mistake isn't kindness itself, it's the moment kindness turns into emotional overinvestment before the relationship has earned it. Good men often rush to give all their emotional depth up front, before genuine polarity and attraction are firmly established. They pour attention, vulnerability, and commitment into a connection that's still in its fragile early stages. From their perspective, they're building intimacy. From her side, the energy feels lopsided. Instead of being drawn toward him, she feels like he has already moved all the way toward her, leaving no tension, no unknown, no sense of gradual unfolding. When a woman senses that she has quietly become the axis of a man's emotional world, it does not usually make her feel more in love. It makes her feel like she's holding something too heavy. She doesn't experience his vulnerability as leadership. She experiences it as exposure without structure. Leadership, emotionally, doesn't mean telling her what to do or hiding what you feel. It means you can remain steady in your sense of self while allowing connection to deepen. Your emotions don't spike and crash with every shift in her mood or level of attention. When your confidence and happiness rise and fall completely based on whether she's warm or distant that day, you unintentionally place her above you in the emotional hierarchy. Not as a person, but in the dynamic. She stops feeling chosen and starts feeling responsible for how you're doing. That is not an experience that invites passion. It invites caretaking or escape. This is why so many good men hear, "You're incredible, but," and then watch her walk away. She isn't lying when she says you did nothing wrong. She simply lost the upward pull. No woman feels deep, enduring respect for a man who hands her the keys to his entire emotional life and says, "Please drive carefully." Not because she wants control, but because she wants to feel she's in the presence of someone who already has a direction, someone she can join, not someone she has to manage. When you make her the center, she loses the sensation of being invited into something larger than herself. Once that feeling disappears, no amount of additional effort, gifts, or affection can recreate it. Many of the men who get hurt the most are the ones with the best intentions. They were never told that overgiving emotional access too early or too absolutely flips the polarity. They genuinely thought that being fully transparent and endlessly available was the ultimate expression of love. In reality, they slowly dissolved the sense of separateness that makes desire possible. By the time they realize it, she's already emotionally checked out, and all they're left with is confusion and self-blame. The answer is not to swing to the other extreme and become hard, distant, or emotionally numb. Pulling away as a tactic isn't leadership, it's another kind of dependence. You're still defining yourself around her, just in reverse. True emotional leadership looks very different. It's the state of being self-contained, able to give love, attention, and presence without leaking your sense of self into the other person. You are available but not absorbent, open but not formless. A man who is self-contained doesn't need to vanish to create value. He already has value because he has a life that is bigger than any single relationship. His time, energy, and focus are shaped by his purpose, his standards, and the commitments that existed before she arrived and will remain whether she stays or leaves. That doesn't mean he's cold or detached. It means he isn't hinging his identity on her approval. From her perspective, that groundedness is magnetic. She doesn't feel chased or smothered. She feels oriented, like she's standing next to something solid she can lean toward without being asked to carry it. This is the man who can be deeply affectionate without over-explaining himself. He doesn't feel compelled to text nonstop or constantly ask for reassurance. He also doesn't play childish games or withhold to seem mysterious. He simply allows space. He lets silence exist without rushing to fill it. He can say no without apology and yes without needing a reward. His consistency comes from self-respect, not desperation. You can feel when a man acts from that place because his presence is calm but not dull, stable but not lifeless. The distinction almost no one makes for men is this: being responsive and being endlessly accessible are not the same thing. Responsiveness says, I'm here and I care. Constant accessibility says, I have no structure of my own. Take as much as you want. Boundaries are not barriers to intimacy. They provide the container in which intimacy can grow without drowning both people. A man with boundaries naturally creates a rhythm in the relationship. There are moments of closeness and moments of separation, times when you connect deeply and times when you both live your individual lives. That rhythm is what keeps the story alive. When you stop needing to be chosen to feel worthy, your entire energy shifts. You're no longer broadcasting fear of loss in every gesture. You're no longer signaling, please don't leave, I don't know who I am without you. Instead, your vibe becomes, I choose to be here and I will be okay whatever happens. Women feel that difference viscerally. They don't feel put on a pedestal or dragged onto a throne. They feel invited to stand beside someone who is already whole. In the end, women don't fall deeply for men who make them feel like emotional babysitters. They fall for men who quietly invite them to grow, to meet them at a higher level of presence, honesty, and self-respect. Attraction is sustained not by endless comfort or nonstop reassurance, but by direction. If you abandon your own emotional core and hope that love will reward your sacrifice, you set yourself up to be slowly replaced by someone who didn't make that trade. Hold your position not as a strategy, but as a commitment to yourself. From that place, connection doesn't require chasing, begging, or proving. You become the man she chooses, freely, repeatedly, and with genuine desire, because you never stop being someone worth rising toward.